Evening, everybody. Hey, welcome to this episode of the No Closure Show. As always, Scott Carson, jacked up to be here with you today, and I'm really excited to have a buddy on here. Somebody who has just got a passion for helping people. You walk in the room and his energy just it explodes out of him. All right, he's a real estate investor, realtor. He's also the podcast host of the Foreclosure Fix and the managing director of ASO Custom Homes LLC. He's got over 15 years of real estate investment experience. He also likes investing in second liens, junior liens, which we haven't anybody on to talk about junior liens in a while. We're really excited about it. He's got a book coming out. We'll talk more about it. I won't take any way of his thunder. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the Atlanta-based badass DJ Olojo joining us here this morning. So Olojo, sorry, I had the ho there because you said that earlier when we were talking about that.
Hey man, you live in Texas, so you get a pass for sure, man. So
that's right, because the J is like silent here a lot. DJ Olojo,
absolutely,
obviously, and we had a chance to catch up in New Orleans at FinCon, and we'd exchanged a few emails and back stuff, but it was great to spend time talking with you. And you had me on your show a few weeks back, but man, big things going on in DJ's world, huh?
Hey man, it's been a great start to 2024. The new book is out, The Foreclosure Fix: 12 Steps to Beat the Bank, 12 Steps to Escape Foreclosure, Beat the Bank, and turn your property into a profitable asset. And so grateful to be on your show today, and grateful to talk with your audience, man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. 2024 is off rock and rolling. You know, we always crack up because people always ask, "Oh, what new things?" I'm like, "Man, we're just going to keep trading, keep buying notes, keep teaching people how to do it, and keep rocking around with the podcast episodes." But you have, let's share your backstory a little bit. How'd you get into where you're at today? What excited you about real estate? What were you doing prior to becoming an investor in your journey of 15 años ago?
I know, right? It's been a little while, man. I like your Spanish though, man. It's muy bueno. So
muy mal. It's muy bueno con más cervezas. But anyway,
no, man. When I left undergrad, I came out of college as a management consultant. So my first job out of college, I was a management consultant and started consulting with hospital systems on human capital management stuff. And I was on boats, planes, and trains. And with that company, traveled around the country, both in DC, Nebraska, went to grad school. And while I was in Nebraska, I had an opportunity to come back to Atlanta with the same company. And I came back and I was still doing a consulting thing. But one of my buddies had started kind of investing in real estate, and he started investing at the courthouse steps. And so he was in grad school and I was a consultant, and he was investing in real estate. And so we kind of just teamed up, and he was like, "Hey, you can come down here and learn it from me." So I was like, "Hey, I'm about to learn it." And so I started buying houses on the courthouse steps. And that's how I got started in real estate. Like I said, about 15 years ago. And at that time, it was the bubble had popped and it was slim pickings of investors who were new, because everybody just didn't want real estate anymore. They were just like, I'm licking my wounds. And I was in a position where I was so green, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so it was a benefit because I was able to grow up in real estate in a market that was very challenging, where I couldn't go get a hard money loan because there was no hard money lenders lending. I had to, make it happen. I had to ask friends and family, had to use my credit cards. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that today, but at the time it was the way we were buying real estate. And fast forward to, over a decade later, I then stopped just doing basic traditional real estate, and I started doing not only day-to-day real estate, but non-performing and performing loans. And that link of both of those together, of being the person who has talked to tons of people in foreclosure, being the person who has bought your house, being the person who has tried to get you to sell your house, and then switching and being the bank and saying, "Hey, I'm trying to get you to pay. I want to modify. I want to do something." And just like you hear nothing, really gave me the inspiration not only to write the book, but for the passion for those people who are facing a challenging time and really don't know what to do and who have their heads stuck in the sand.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks up there that had still stuck in the sand, both the residential and the commercial side of things. And I think back to when you got started in 2009, I remember being in Atlanta and how rough that market was. The amount, there's a lot of foreclosures. There are a lot of people hurting. I mean, it's Georgia is the second fastest foreclosure state, only to Texas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
it leads
Yep.
into some opportunity. But I can remember, like I remember the brand new shiny bank. Was it the Bank of America building that was built there in downtown Atlanta? You know, the big tower, and then
Yep.
ended up selling on a note deal at like 30 cents on the dollar of what it would cost to build it.
Yep, it was absolutely crazy. And it was really interesting you say that though when you talk about how fast it is to foreclose. In Georgia, it's a really fast foreclosure state. And one of the things that I talk about in the book, and one of the things that has always stayed in my mind while I'm in this business, was one of my first times at the foreclosure auction. I had never been there. I was just going out there as a spectator, and didn't know what to expect. I thought it would be, that big old auction style dude with a cowboy hat saying bye, 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 bye. So, I thought it'd be something like that, right? And it was nothing like that. It was, attorneys just calling out properties, and people buying and paying with cashier's checks. But on this specific day, there was a family running around. And I remember it. It was an African American family, and the dad was just going around, and they were basically begging people not to buy their house. And they were saying, please don't buy my house. If you buy this house at 123, I still live there, don't buy it, it's not a good house, blah 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 blah. And it just really made me frustrated,
Yeah.
because in my mind I was trying to really figure out who was at fault. Was it the bank? Was it them? Who was it? But it was just a really sad sight to see. And I like to say that's the only time I ever saw it. But that was the first time I saw it. I've seen it many times,
Right.
and it's just really jarring, and it's really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, now in Georgia, do you have to have all cash or all cashier's check at the bidding at the auction?
Yep,
Okay,
you're
great.
full certified funds.
Same like you here in Austin. Okay, great. And does it happen daily there? Does it happen once a month, or how often does it happen on a monthly basis?
In Georgia, it's always the first Tuesday of the month,
So it's
rain, sleet, or snow.
the same thing
Yep.
as in Austin, Texas. Okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that's the thing is when you see that stress, you see the other side of the dollar, as I like to say, the other side of the transaction of folks losing their house. And bad things happen to good people all the time, especially back then. It was not people's fault that their values dropped 30-40%. That we had the meltdown, the subprime meltdown, stuff like that. Now, I do say that people have to take responsibility for the mortgages that they sign off on, and if they do cash
Absolutely.
outs, you know what I mean. It's sincere. But there was a lot of fraud that was taking place back then, and there was also a lot of unscrupulous folks out there that were creating loans that people shouldn't have signed on, that didn't have any need to be in those type of loans out there. I remember being a mortgage broker and leaving the mortgage business in 2008 and dealing with foreclosures and stuff like that, and investing in fix and flips and stuff like that. We got started roughly about the same time, a few years apart. But it always pulls at your strings. Like, well, that's the other side of the transaction. That's the person who's losing their house. That's the person that I'm making money on, who's had a bad thing in regards to their losing their house and facing foreclosure and dealing with eviction, that we're going to be making money on. And you never want to see that, obviously, but it happens. It is the nature of the business in a lot of cases, and you try to help people as much as you can to help them out of a bad situation. That's what I love about what you're doing with the book, and wanting to help a million people out there avoid foreclosure.
No, and I think that's the essence of the business, right? When I talk to note investors across the country at conferences, and your students and things like that, there are very few people who say, yeah, I just want the house back, right? And typically when they do want the house back, it's in a situation where it's a heck or something like that, and you're trying to get the house back. But most of the time, people want the payment stream. They want them to reperform. And so I don't think that our industry gets enough credit for trying to create workouts and things
Exactly.
like that. But most people don't want the house; they just want the payments. And the more homeowners understand that, I think the more you can get to a better space and a better solution.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it all comes down to education. Letting homeowners know what their options are, what they can do. I mean, I was just talking with a lady down in Corpus Christi, Texas, a few weeks ago, and she's got a house. There's a vacant house down from my mom's house, right? And I'm like, maybe I'll buy this house. Look, it's vacant, needs some work. I tracked down the borrower. She lives there. Doesn't live at the house anymore. It's vacant. It's with a bank, big military bank out of San Antonio, which we won't name any names. But she hasn't lived there for a couple of years, and she's like, "Well, they keep saying." I was like, "Well, what do you want to do? She says, well, they wouldn't do a short sale. It needs a lot of work. I tried to, I said, well, if they're not going to deal with me, you can just give the house back. And she's like, what are you talking about? They keep saying they're going to foreclose on me. I said, well, they could foreclose on you. It's Texas. Why they haven't doesn't mean, you've been out of it for 2 years. Why they haven't foreclosed? I don't think they're going to do it next month. They've been done for 24 months, but just go ahead and deed the property back. Go get you a deed. Here, I'll send you a sample deed. You can sign it, notarize it, and ship it into your lender, or go file it yourself so that you're no longer on. And she's like, I didn't know I could do that. I'm like, yeah, you can do that. It's totally your right to do. And sometimes she was amazed, like, well, I think you're trying to buy the property. It's like, well, yeah, I was, but if the bank's not going to work with us, then let me at least help you out of the bad situation. You know what I mean?
Man, and that's what it is. There's a lack of education for homeowners, because you got to remember, most people aren't like us. They haven't done hundreds, or maybe in your case, thousands of real estate transactions. They have done maybe 1 to 2 transactions in their life when they bought their house. And so for them, it's like, I have options. I don't have to get out. I can file bankruptcy. Well, I don't have to move out until after the foreclosure sale. Like, they're just like, I can get cash for keys. Like, there's all these different things that they just don't know about. And, our goal is to educate them and inform them and help them make the best decision for them in that scenario.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you were getting started there, do you remember your first interaction with a distressed borrower, or walking into a foreclosed home, or working with a homeowner? Tell me about that first interaction, and what was the biggest eye-opening thing from it?
So I'll be honest with you. I don't remember the first one, because when we first started, we didn't want to interact with homeowners at all. So if the house was not vacant, we didn't even bid on it.
Okay.
And so we were like nervous, and we were both green. And I just was like, I don't want to, I don't know what the eviction process was like. I was a rookie. I was a newbie.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Yeah. But the first time I remember actively kind of reaching out and talking to homeowners, pre-foreclosure, and talking to them, there's a couple of different insights that came to mind. One was, the foreclosure creates the urgency that was never there. Yeah. And these people knew for a long time that they hadn't been making payments. They knew that something was going to happen, but it wasn't until a foreclosure date was set and they had only a couple weeks that they then were saying, hey, I want to sell, or I want to do something. And so that stuck with me, because it created the urgency that they needed. And so if you are on the lender side and you are saying, why aren't these people responding to my letters? Why aren't these people picking up the phone call and calling me back? Why aren't they calling my servicer? You have to take the necessary steps as a lender to protect your investment, to protect your investors, and walk down that process all the way to the foreclosure. I can't tell you how many times we have got a negotiation or a deal done a few days before the foreclosure sale. That creates the pressure for homeowners who have their head stuck in the sand. The next thing I will say is, it really opened my eyes to the plight of people in today's society. I think a lot of times we walk by every day and we think that people's lives are similar to ours, right? That they're going well, that things are going good. And every day you are reminded that there is somebody who is just one bad thing away from their life being altered forever. And that could be a medical diagnosis. That could be a kid or a loved one passing away. That could be a job loss. And so it gives me the grace to always say, all right, this person's going off on me. They're upset. They're mad. But if I was in their situation, I'd be doing the same thing. They have a reason to be that way. And I think that is the other eye opener that being in this business has allowed me to understand is about the humanality and compassion that you need to have as somebody who is in a better position at this season of my life than the person I'm talking to. Right. And so the last thing I'll say I've learned is that people will tell you a whole bunch of crap, and they will lie to you with the smile on their face. And you need to be able to listen, learn, and move forward accordingly. Right. And so in dealing with borrowers, when people tell me something and they say they're going to do something, I take their word for it. So if a borrower says, hey, I'm going to look at filing bankruptcy, or I'm going to call you back in 2 days, I'm taking your word for it and I'm listening to you. and I'm waiting for you to do what you said you're going to do. And the moment you stop doing what you say you're going to do, that's the moment we just, move forward with our normal processes.
Yeah.
And so those three things were the three eye openers when I started dealing with people at volume that I really began to understand. It's just, they help color my life now, because every day I'm grateful for what I have. I'm grateful for the opportunities, and I'm grateful that I'm able to help people, but I'm also grateful that I'm not the one in the situation.
Yeah, that's so true. Money issues will make you do interesting things, and being stressed of losing your home, it makes people grasp at straws. It's almost like they'll do anything to try to extend that deadline or kick the can down the road another week or another month. When we foreclosed on so many different assets, and then sometimes it's been friendly that we had to do that. We worked with a borrower on. Other times it's been a little bit of animosity there from the bar to us. Like, listen, we've given you the opportunity. We gave you get out of jail cards 3 or 4 times. You said you never followed up on your word of what you're going to do. So no, I'm not going to sit here and delay this anymore. I run a business. You having a mortgage is part of that business and stuff like that. If you're not going to pay, pay, stay. You know what I mean? Are you just, you can start, go ahead, DJ.
Well, I said, one of the biggest things that I've learned going through the real estate process and being a real estate investor first before I was on the note side is that it's always great when you can come to a win-win with the borrower. Mm-hmm. And if you are in a position where you can do more for the homeowner or more for the borrower or more for the seller, right? But in every transaction, anytime I give a concession, that concession is taken away from my company and the people who I have to feed and the people who I have to who I owe, their paychecks to and things like that. And so I always keep that in mind, because it has to be fair for all parties. It can't just be one-sided. And you can definitely do good. But at the end of the day, you have to also understand that this is a business. And in running a business, if my doors close, only my daughters are the ones starving, right? And so I need to make sure that we run a business.
So you're in Atlanta. You're just buying foreclosure homes there in Fulton County or all around Georgia?
So we buy in Georgia, pretty much 50 miles of Atlanta in every direction. So, cool. and we're a small shop. I'm not a huge, large entity or anything like that. Mm-hmm. We're a small mom and pop shop, and we probably do anywhere between, on the house side, anywhere between 12 and 24 deals a year, right?
That's great. That's awesome, man.
But we're consistent.
Don't limit yourself. You need to reach around and do a little pat in the back there. That's pretty good, because that's the thing here. That's 11 to 23 more than most investors ever do.
I appreciate that. But, in today's world with everybody, flexing on all the social medias, I know people are doing 100 deals a month. Right. So I was like,
you know what, they may say they're doing 100 deals a month, but with more deals, there's more issues, there's more babysitting, there's more problems. So I was on a podcast yesterday, Better Than Rich, with my buddy Mike Abrametz. And he was asking that question. What about what do you consider being rich? Is it doing a lot of deals? I'm like, no, it's your life. Everybody has what they consider rich themselves. For some people, they're trying to do 100, but I guarantee they're not very happy. You know what I mean? In being a small mom and pop shop, I love that, because you're a boutique firm. You're able to do a little bit deeper dive. You're a little pickier, which is great, because you're not going to get in over your head. Some of the biggest mistakes I made was buying like big portfolios and not being prepared for some of that stuff, and it took a while to get through that stuff. So don't ever discount yourself on that. You're pulling the trigger, which is what most people want to do. Now, when pulling the trigger here on this stuff, what made you? How did you find the note business? How did you find junior liens? What kind of was that transaction, and how did that come about, DJ?
And so that's a very interesting transition that we got into. We were looking at a house on the courthouse steps in Fulton County, and the house was a second, or the mortgage that was being sold on the steps was a second position mortgage, and it was a nice house in a part of Buckhead, and the opening bid on the house came out way more than what the value would be when you factor in the first mortgage and everything else. So we didn't bid on it. But at the time, my business partner went and looked up who the owner of the second mortgage was. And, we thought it was going to be some big bank or like, Bank of America or something like that. And it ended up being some fund. And somehow, some way, he found out who the fund was. And he was like, hey, he called the fund up and said, hey, I think you guys just took back the second mortgage. We'll offer you, I don't know if it was $50,000 or $75,000 to buy the house as is. You won't have to do anything. And, I thought it was a shot in the dark, but I was like, hey, man, try it. And long story short, they sold it to us. And it wasn't like, oh, you got to go up the street to Bank of America and you got to go through their underwriting process and their due diligence. It was very much like Scott, you want to sell this note? Sure. What are you offering? Let me go back and talk to my investors. Hey, yeah, we'll sell it. And so I was like, they're not a big institution. They're not that big. It can't be that big. And I think I started going on their website and just trying to do some more due diligence. And that took me down the rabbit hole of like, hey, there's a whole nother industry out here where you are not a huge entity, but you could be a small operation and still own distressed debt or performing debt. And people used to always talk about seller financing and things like that. But at that stage in my investment career, I didn't really have the money to start being a seller finance. I didn't think of myself as like a hard money lender, or, when I bought a house, I wanted all my cash right now. I didn't want payments. I still don't want payments. Right,
what I mean? Exactly. You got to get that money in to go do some more stuff.
Exactly.
That's the things people don't realize. Anyway, sorry, we'll go down that rabbit hole later on.
Oh man, yes, I was happy. I was happy to make $10,000, on a flip, because I was like, that's more than I'm making in my retirement account. So let's go. Let's do it again. Let's wash, rinse, and repeat. Right. And so, long story short, when I had that epiphany of like, there's a whole nother side, I spent the next, few years just trying to pull back the layers of the onion. Because I will say, you talk about it a lot. Everybody knows about your show, but in all honesty, this is still very much a hidden gem in real estate, because so many people are enamored with the actual physical property. They don't think about the paper because they have the same mental blocks that I had, because I have to think, you got to be a big bank to be able to own a mortgage. That's who does it. And so once I was able to go through that experience, I just kind of started researching. I found different podcasts like yours. I found different podcasts of other people. I looked on YouTube. I saw there were some books out there, and that just started the whole journey of getting into the note space. And it took me maybe 2 to 3 years after that before I actually, started buying some paper or something like that. But I was still active on the real estate side, and it just lit a fire under me to start really figuring out what was going on this side of the fence.
So while you're buying foreclosures to fix and flip, and you're getting into some junior liens and some other note stuff, still working the consulting, the management consulting job, or when did you leave that?
Oh yeah. So rewind, right? My daughter is about to be 10. So I left right before my daughter was born. So I've been a full-time real estate investor for over 10 years. And the reason why I left then was because I was on boats, planes, and trains. And thankfully at the time, my wife was a pharmacist. And so I was like, this is my shot. I was like, my wife can pay all the bills. I can be a house husband for a little bit. Right. And if it doesn't work out, I'm still gainfully employable.
Right.
But I didn't want to be on boats, planes, and trains because that was going to be my first child. And I was trying to be there, be present if I could. And I just saw the opportunity in real estate. And I was like, hey, I'm going to try to make this work. Now, in all honesty, would I recommend that for somebody in today's environment? It's a little bit more challenging now. But if you do decide to go that route and go full time and burn the bridges, as they like to say, I would always make sure either you have a large emergency fund that you don't have to touch to operate your business, or one spouse, if you have a spouse or a life partner or whatever else may be the case, is working and can support the household, because that makes it a lot easier to achieve the goal. Because the big thing for me is that when I did make $10,000 on a flip, I didn't have to go spend $8,000 to pay my bills and stuff like that. I was able to reinvest that into the business. And so if you do that for, a couple years, then you're in a situation where it's like, well, I actually have a little bit of wind behind me, and you can grow. And so that was the benefit for me at that time in that season. And so I'm grateful to have a wife who was supportive, and it worked out really good for us.
I love that. It's a great story. Now, with that conversation with her being a pharmacist and you being in the management consulting side, did you had to say, hey, honey, I got an opportunity here. I think this is a chance to do something different, something I probably enjoy a lot more, and be more of a daycare daddy at home in a lot of cases, which is a great thing. Did you guys start putting things in place? You kind of build a 6 month or 1 year kind of runway before you left the job, or you said, hey, I'm calling my shot and quitting the job cold turkey and going from there?
No, so you know, you got to remember, I started about 15 years ago, so
Yeah.
I had a track record, right? I was doing this for multiple years, having success, and I was using that money just to reinvest and
Yep.
reinvest because I didn't need the money. And so I had a track record, I had success, I had some money. And so when I left one job, on Friday, on Monday, I was at the new job and it was like, cooking, right? Cooking with
Yep.
grease. And so there was no startup process. There was no, let me figure out, I think I already had rehabs going on, from one to the other. So nothing changed for me. The biggest thing was that I was just able to focus, 40 plus hours a week
Right.
on this versus splitting my time between 40 hours and traveling at one job to then, at night trying to, piecemeal this. And I'll be honest with you, at that juncture, it was still a step back, right?
Sure.
Because, I was a management consultant. I had a 6-figure income. And so, it wasn't pennies, right? But it was a step back that allowed me to take a huge leap forward over the next few years. And
Right.
that was the big thing. And more than anything else, for us, my wife basically was like, hey, look, you quit now and I'm quitting later, right?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
And so I quit first, but then she later joined us maybe about 5 years later. And so now we both work together in our business. And she does all the stuff I don't like to do and takes none of the credit. And I do all the fun stuff and get all the credit. So it's a beautiful partnership. I love it.
It's a beautiful partnership. Behind every successful guy is an even more patient and fed up with our shit woman in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. So I think like it's funny because I always tell folks like me and my wife, we met in high school though. And okay. I tell her I got the better end of the agreement because I married you not married you. I met you when you were young and you were still naive. And so now, now that you're older and you're smarter, you're already stuck with me. So that's just the way it works. You know what I
mean? As we say, you outkicked your coverage, basically.
Hey, look,
nothing wrong with that.
Wait a minute. I can't even play football. That's how bad it is, right?
Well, that's the beauty of it. Now, I'm sure she's had some thoughts on the foreclosure side of people being foreclosed on, stuff like that. What was her initial thought about that, or her thoughts? Because I know sometimes it can come because women happen to be a little bit more. And this is not everybody. I'm not trying to pigeonhole anything, but they're more worried about the nest to make sure everything's safe. And especially when you have kids, it's, besides you guys being willy-nilly and riverboat gamblers when we're single in a lot of cases, you've got a family to worry about, to support and take care of, right?
No, absolutely. So my wife's whole mentality around just our business in general comes from the side of having seen all the stuff that we have experienced in this business. Her mindset is like, I never want to be in that situation. And so her mindset is like, we need to do everything we can possible to avoid that situation. And that's, living within our means. That's having passive income when you think about notes and you think about rental property. And so for my wife, she doesn't really even care about the flipping business. She said, I don't really care if you ever flip another house, right? Her big thing was like, she wanted enough passive income from either rental properties or note investments or whatever that, we could still live a modest life and nothing would have to change for us, that we can still support. And so she definitely brings a level of conservativeness and a level of being grounded to the picture that, somebody like me, I'm always trying to go 1,000 miles an hour and I'm trying to, I'll risk it all. Right. And she's like, no, you're not risking anything besides, besides the quarters that are in your pocket, and so that's what she brings to the table. And it's a really great balance because, like I said, she's a bean counter, right? She can tell you what tenants have not paid. She can tell you, who has not paid their note this month and everything else, right? Which is really important to the way in which we work. But that was her thing. She just really she likes security. She wanted to be in a position where no matter what happened, she didn't want to be the person in foreclosure seeing and experiencing the things that we've seen people experience.
Right. No, it totally makes a lot of sense. Now, let's go back to the seconds a little bit, kind of retract a little bit here on the conversation there for you. So you bought your first second behind that. Have you bought a bunch of seconds? Or I mean, you've looked at a lot. I know we all look at a ton of them and stuff like that. But what would you say has been your cup of tea when it comes to seconds? Do you have a buy box that you like, a few states that you like more so?
Well, yeah. So, if I said what my buy box is and what my favorite type of second mortgage is, my favorite type of second mortgage is the second mortgage that the seller thinks is a second mortgage, but it's really a first mortgage. That is my favorite type, right? You know what I mean? You come across those every blue moon, but it doesn't happen too often. But that's my favorite type of second mortgage. But in my career, I've probably done about, north of 50 note transactions. So
Nice.
I'm not a huge player in this space either, but north of 50 note transactions. And they've ranged from, I think the largest UPB I bought was over like a couple, like 200 some $1,000 in UPB, all the way down to, I think I just bought something that was like a $5,000 UPB
Yeah.
here recently, right? And so it ranges hugely. And typically, I like personally for my strategy and where I'm at in my investment career, I typically am never in one note for more than $50,000, right?
Okay.
And typically I like to even keep that south of that to be more like 25,000. And the reason why is when I was learning seconds and I learned from folks like Bill McCafferty, Rob Hytha, and I still learn from guys like you. And I learned from guys like, who else do I learn about? Chris 70.
Faquan as well. Faquan Bilal.
I've not learned. Well, when I say I've listened to Quan's podcast, but I haven't learned from him directly. We've actually done some trades together. I bought from him before, but I've never went through his program or anything. But Bill McCafferty in particular, I learned a lot from him. And one of the things that he taught me, and when I was working with him, is he basically was like, with second position notes, basically you buy three. And he was like, one, you're going to lose money on, one, you're going to break even on, and one, you're going to do very, very well on. And so that model in my head has always stuck with me, because when you're buying second position, you're buying junior liens, right? And the advantage of buying the junior liens is, one, if you are a small investor or you don't want to deploy a lot of capital, you can find notes that you can actually buy in the range in which fits your financial desires. The other side about it is that as a junior lien holder, I don't really check the taxes. I don't really check the other things. Like, I'll check to see if they're paid, but typically the first mortgage holder is the one keeping an eye on all that stuff, which helps you. And so it's one less thing to worry about. And then the other part that I've seen on the second liens is that typically you can get a higher yield because you're buying them at a slightly better discount. But then also, if you modify them or things like that, you can really get higher to like the 10% plus range on your interest rates, because of the fact that you as a lender want them to kind of refinance this debt out sooner rather than later. And so you want to give them an incentive and a reason to refi you out. And so that's been the benefit of the junior lien space. And I really enjoy it. I do still buy first mortgages every blue moon. But typically when I buy first, I'm buying first performing. And the mortgages that I bought that are first position, I still like to be in that same range. So it's hard to find those type of notes.
Yeah, you're talking the $50,000 range or below
for my purchase price. Like UPB is probably under 100,000, but then the range of purchase price, 50K and below.
Then we need to talk, because I can show you how to find those definitely all day long, left and right, and twice on Sunday. Let's talk about it. But okay. So I love that you've learned strategies, you're applying it. Any particular states that you like more the seconds than the first in, or you're ambivalent, just as long as it's not like the communist states of California or something like that?
Man, so I love our fast foreclosure non-judicial states. Those are always the best.
Right.
But in all honesty, I have seen that you can get a better discount in states that are a little bit tougher. And so I have some New York files right now. I got some New Jersey files right now. I got some PA files right now. I got some Illinois files right now. You know what I mean? I have some tough states, but you can get great discounts on them. And so I like my fast foreclosure states, but for the most part, I am yield oriented or
Mm-hmm.
IRR oriented, right? So if I know I can get a significantly higher return, I don't mind waiting 2 years for that return because the money I'm using for this is specified for it. So
Right. Now, are you using your own funds or raising capital for your deals these days?
yeah, man. So I'm only using my own. Well, on the note investing side, I'm only using my own funds,
Okay.
and for the most part, we use our retirement account funds. And
Sure.
so
Okay.
we have self-directed solo 401ks and stuff like that. And so we use notes are perfect for that because I can have third-party management with the
Yeah.
asset manager with the servicer. It's clean. I'm not owning any real estate, so we really like it. So that's primarily how we invest in notes. On the residential real estate side, we use lenders all the time. So
Sure. Makes sense. Now, are you, I got to ask you, you got an ESA for the kids, a self-directed ESA, putting their money, their retirement fund or
mm,
college education funds to work for them?
man, we don't have a self-directed ESA. We have the self-directed HSA, right?
Okay.
We
Yeah.
haven't done ESA. Our goal though, and my kids are what? I should know their ages, right?
And
They're
one's at
6 and
10.
I'm
One's
about to
at
say
10,
that.
I think,
Oh
right?
yeah. No, they're 6 and 9. They'll be
Okay.
10 and 7 this year, right? And so our goal is like my 10-year-old. I think she's smart enough and old enough and looks legit enough to now get paid a salary for licking envelopes and stamps and stuff like
There you
that.
go.
And so we'll probably get a Roth going for her this year and start that process to help build her Roth. And before you know it, she'll be a lender, on somebody's property here shortly. So
Right, exactly. Well, that's smart. I mean, that's the great thing. That's what you want to do, and you got the things that. And I have to get once again pat you in the back. 50 notes, 50 seconds, and stuff like that. That's great. That's more than most people. So if I can tell you anything, be a little more proud of your experience, DJ, because you're kicking ass and taking names. You may not think so, and that's good. You're humble, but you got some flash to you, buddy. Don't sell yourself short, man.
hey man, as my wife, as I tell my wife, these bow ties ain't cheap, so I got to keep working hard, man. So
I love that. That's really become part of your brand, though, and it hasn't. Because every time I've seen you, you've always been wearing a bow tie. It's kind of your calling thing, right?
Well, yeah, man. So I was once told that I have a face for radio, and so I had to give people something else to look at. And so by doing that, the bow tie is just one of those things that's become my signature, man. And so I have a good collection. I think I have over 100 at this point, man. So
Very
you know,
nice.
the
Very
goal is
nice.
to have more notes than I have bow ties, though.
There we go. Well, we got to work with that a little bit there to help you out there. Now, let's talk about the book. First of all, I'm all the Foreclosure Fix, 12 steps to avoid foreclosure. I'm probably butchering that, but I had it pulled up here a second ago.
Yeah,
12 proven
12
steps to beat the bank, escape foreclosure,
yeah.
and turn your property into a profitable asset. That's awesome. Now, out of the 12 steps, first of all, how long did it take you to write the book, and what was your process for writing it?
Well, so it's a really good question you asked, right? And I never really wanted to write the book. And so for me, this is a conversation I've had with folks numerous times. And so I've had this conversation with folks over 1,000 times in my career. And so I didn't want to write the book. But what happened one day is that my wife heard me talking to a homeowner on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I'm not sure if you notice, but when you're talking to these homeowners, your voice changes, right? She was like, you get excitable, like you start pacing, you start walking around and stuff like that. And she was like, you should try to not write. She didn't say write the book, but she was like, you should just kind of be mindful of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a good way, right? It's cup filling, it's bucket filling. And so that just led me down a path where it's like, how do I create more opportunities to have this conversation without having the conversation? And so I was like, I got to write it down. And so I just began to start the process. So writing the book was probably a 2-year journey, but it wasn't because it took that long to come up with the steps. It was because it took that long to be able to figure out how to make a layperson understand what we already know, because we've been in the industry, we live it, we breathe it, we talk about it every day. And so it took a couple years to write, and it was just a project I did on the side and at nights and things like that. But it really has become a labor of love and something that I'm proud of, and something that I hope, my kids will read and say, oh, my dad actually tried to help people when he was here. And so that was that's a good thing.
Well, it's phenomenal. It's definitely especially your background, my background, stuff like that. When you're in the industry longer than a year and you've closed more than one deal in a lot of cases, you've got a great experience and a wealth of knowledge to draw from, and so much knowledge that people just don't know about. I mean, we're smarter than 99.9% of the people out there. A lot of times smarter than the folks at the bank too, because they're just paycheck people showing up for a paycheck in day and out. And they're only going to regurgitate what the bank tells them to regurgitate. How do I know that? As an ex-banker, you know what I mean? So, I walked away from banking and my eyes were open, like, oh my God, this is what you can really do, not what the bank was just telling me. So that's the beautiful thing. Now you've also got the podcast has been out for a while. What's been your big aha nugget with the podcast? Anything that's just been overwhelming or doors opening or what?
Yeah, man. I think with the podcast, one of my biggest takeaways is how difficult it is to grow a podcast, right? So kudos to you for having as many episodes out as you have, but growing a podcast and being committed and consistently doing a podcast is hard work. And so I commend every podcaster out there who is committed to that craft. The other eye opener that I had is how quickly you can get better at it if you continue to do it. You're a natural when you get on camera, you're ready to go. Like there's no prep needed or anything like that with you. There's no blunders. You're used to it, and you can get better very quickly if you practice and you continue to do it. And so that's been the other key takeaway. The last thing is that how many people actually listen to your podcast that you just don't know. Like you probably have this happen to you all the time. People come up to you and be like, "Hey, man, I heard about your last episode was really good." And you're trying to think through because you may have batched your episodes, or you're like, "What episode was that you're talking about, or what you're talking about?" And so that's been really cool, and it's been a really good journey, man. And more than anything, like I said, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in this season of my life. And that feeling is always great.
Well, and this is the thing I think is folks that have a big heart and get into investing for the right thing. We go through that journey of we first get into make money, right? Yep. B, they say, hey, I want to do this full time. So you do that. C, can I bring my spouse home? Can I, provide a better life at C? And then D is like giving back. Absolutely. How do I help others get along the way? And I've always found that the most successful people are the most giving of their time because they don't want people to make the same mistake, and that you will always find the people that are the most successful out there who are willing to help. They're also the ones that are going to recognize game. You know what I mean? Game recognizes game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And that's the beauty of it. And the podcast is great. I was honored to be on it. And there's not enough of us out there that are sticking with it long term. Stick with it. I mean, you're in the top 1%, not only of what you've done as an investor in your real estate, but also the note business, but then also what you're doing with the podcast and the course of the book. Just keep sharing that amazing light and that fire that you've got to help people when it comes out. I mean, you can sit down with you for 10, 15 minutes and just see that you've got a passion behind you. And I commend you on that there, DJ. It's great. The energy is great, and people are attracted to honey versus vinegar a whole lot more. You got a whole lot of honey there, buddy.
Hey, man. If that's your way of calling me fat, I'll take the compliment.
No,
right?
no. You're a leading, no buying investing machine, buddy. There's not at all. But that's the thing. So you got the podcast, and I'm sure it's opening some doors for it. We'll spend some time offline, and I'll help you with some things about that. But it's really easy for you guys that are listening out there or watching. Just go to the foreclosurefix.com. If you watch the video, you saw me pull up the website. We'll put the link in the show notes and for you to be able to go to it. But check it out. The book is out. Like I said, you can order it at the Foreclosure Fix. You can also order it on Amazon and stuff like that too. Correct, DJ?
Yes, it's on every platform. Amazon, audiobook is out. We got ebooks. We got it in every way. We got hardcover, soft cover, paperback, no back, whatever you want. We got it. So make sure. Now, did you got it every which way?
Did you hire like a book writing coach to help you out with that, or you just take a self-publishing class, or how'd you what helped you kind of get that thing done? You said 2 years, which is great, but was there a coach along the way helped you out with that?
No, so yes, and yes, right? So I wrote the entire book myself, but I did work with a company called Book Launchers to help me launch the book, because one of the things I wanted to make sure I did is that I put out a quality product. And so, from what I wrote to where the book ended is a million miles away. But that's because of different experiences, different things, different rounds of edits. And that what took 2 years, it took me maybe a year to get my first manuscript out, right? And then once my first manuscript was out, it took another year to get to the whole finish line of the publishing process. And that's where I started working with book launchers from that first manuscript to now. And, you know, if you look at the first manuscript, you got 15 or 20 or 30 different revisions of going back and changing this, making this easier, making it more palatable for homeowners, breaking it down, and, you know, not getting too granular, but getting granular enough. That whole process of trying to refine something, because, you know, when we talk about houses and numbers and IRRs and deals and all this other stuff, it comes naturally to us, but somebody who's hearing it for the first time. And so just really trying to hone that messaging. And so, yes, it's been a long process, but a great process. And I've learned a lot throughout it and excited to help a lot more people moving forward.
Right. What's your, besides having a successful launch, everything like that with a book, what's your big goal for the rest of 2024?
A couple key things. One, from a business perspective, we want to make sure that we are doing like the numbers and the volume that we want to do. And so that's really, really important, because while I was writing the book, you know, I took my eyes off a couple key KPIs in our business. And you know, you can't be in two places at one time. You can't have two masters and stuff like that. So really getting back and focusing in on our day-to-day business and making sure our KPIs, really really making sure that we have the right systems and processes for, you know, our team. We're a small team, you know. I got my wife and we have a couple employees and I have a ton of subcontractors, but just making sure that we have the right people in the right seats, but the right processes, because a lot of times, like, if I have to do it, then something went wrong. And so just making sure we have those right things. I'm dealing with the challenges of every business owner in the country, right? Is making sure that you are trying to build a business that doesn't need you to operate day in and day out. And not that you want to step away, not that you won't be there, but if everybody has to come through you to make a decision, nothing is getting done. And so that's my kind of big challenge for this year, is trying to make my business a better business than it already is. And so I'll take any tips or suggestions you got, man. So please, I'm all ears.
Well, I'll tell you this, the delegation, that's one of the biggest things. VAs help a lot with that, and VAs can help in the business, but also on the marketing side. And that's one of the biggest things. We used to have a full-time staff, you know, 5 full-time folks working in an office building. We had 2 offices. And that was a big overhead. Sometimes you're an adult babysitter. And once I leveraged other people and our VAs, it literally revolutionized. You know, we got a whole lot more done at a whole lot less cost and a whole lot less problems. And we saw a lot of growth on there. So I encourage you to do that. And we can talk more about that later on. But for those that are listening or watching us, what's the best way for them to connect with you, DJ, to follow up with you, to get the book, listen to the podcast? What's the best way for folks to connect with you?
The best way is theforeclosurefix.com. You can see everything there. I'm on all the social medias. My favorite is LinkedIn. I'm actually an old school guy. I really like email. So, you know, if you ever want to email me, you can shoot me an email at dj@asoholdings.com. Or if you look at me on the web, you can probably find my phone number. I'll throw it out there. It's my direct sale is 313-971-7385. I'm a licensed agent in Georgia, so you can find me just by Googling me. And so I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And my goal is to help 1 million homeowners successfully navigate foreclosure. So if you have been impacted in a good way by the information, do us a favor, like, subscribe to the Note Closure Show, like, subscribe to my show, check out the book, leave a comment. That's the way in which we know we're doing the right things. And so if you could do that for us, that'd be so helpful. And again, we appreciate you. The last thing I'll say to your audience is that if you are in a situation where you are facing foreclosure, or not just foreclosure, anything going on in your life that's challenging or difficult, I want to let you know that we are resilient people. And that as long as you woke up this morning and you have breath in your lungs and you can walk and you can talk, tomorrow is going to be better than today. The next day is going to be better than that. And you got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Life is hard, but we are resilient, and you got to keep pushing forward. And Scott is a testament to that with the stuff he's been through in his life. And I see it every day in the people who I interact with. And I just want to remind you that, because it's so important. We get beat up a lot, but hey, smile and do something good for somebody.
Amen to that, brother. And we will wrap it up with that there. Once again, guys, check it out, theforeclosurefix.com. I want to thank DJ Olojo for just being on and providing some spunk in our day. Definitely check out the podcast. He's got a great energy on there as well, along with a few pretty cool guests on there, including yours truly. So go out, take some action, everybody. Share the book with somebody. Go out there if you know somebody's facing trouble or a realtor that needs some help on that. Share the book. You won't regret it. But go out there, take some action, everybody, and we'll see you at the top.